right, good evening, everyone. Sorry this took a little longer than usual, but today, or I guess tonight, I'm gonna tell you about my thoughts on the Batman. This is the most recent reboot, starring Robert Pattinson as the Batman, directed by Matt Reeves. I'm gonna keep this real simple for you guys. There's a million different reviews out there. I'm just gonna give you the down and dirty, the pros, the cons, and the kind of meh in between. So let's start off with the positives, right? Without a doubt, one of the best parts of this movie is the direction by Matt Reeves. The way this movie is shot, the direction this movie takes, so storytelling wise, everything under the control of Matt Reeves. He directed his ass off. He did a really great job constructing a story in this movie. He did a really great job displaying his take on Gotham City. Right out the gate, this movie shows you how much of a cesspool, how ugly, how dirty Gotham City is. And I guess before we even go even further into the movie, I say what it's about. Real simple. Batman is in year 2 of being a crime fighter. He's trying to figure out what type of crime fighter he needs to be. He's trying to figure out if he's even having a positive effect on Gotham, or if his presence is actually making things worse. Um, and in the wake of this, we get a new Riddler. Riddler comes out. He's leaving clues for Batman. He's committing murders. He is a serial killer, and much like the Zodiac killer. And it's up to Batman and Commissioner Gordon to go in there and figure out who he is and how to stop him. And along the way, Batman runs into Selena Kyle, played by the amazing Zoe Kravitz, and then he also runs into the Penguin, played by Colin Farrell, which is you've heard this a million times online, but he's completely unrecognizable as the part. And then he also runs into Carmine Falcone, who is played by the absolutely stunning John Turturro, who we'll get into later for sure. So like I said, Batman is in year 2. We see a much different take on this Batman, for better or worse. The best parts of this, though, is that he is the world's greatest detective. Well, he's going to be the world's greatest detective. Right now, he is very much the junior detective version of Batman. There's a lot more detective work in this movie than pretty much any other Batman movie combined. And what I loved about it is that the detective scenes and the crime scene sequences were so good that I almost didn't even need any action in this movie. If it was just a straight up detective story, which it pretty much is, between Batman and Gordon, I would have sat with that for 3 hours. It was absolutely great. Gordon, played by Jeffrey Wright, is absolutely amazing. He really does a great part with Gordon. They really show that, like, Gordon, because of the trust that he has in Batman, whether or not it's out of desperation, the trust he has makes him an outcast amongst the rest of the GCPD. And it shows the corruption inside the GCPD, and it shows how he stays away from that. He's not the commissioner yet. He is a lieutenant at this point, much like Gary Oldman's version in the Dark Knight trilogy. But he does a really great job as Gordon. Like I said, Zoe Kravitz plays Catwoman, and she completely steals the show. Well, she's one of the people that steals the show. They ripped her right out of the comic books. This is the Catwoman straight out of something like When in Rome by Jeff Loeb, or the Bat and the Cat rebirth kind of Catwoman from Tom King. Absolutely did an amazing job. I really hope they keep her around for a sequel or like her own project, because Zoe Kravitz is absolutely amazing in that role, and her relationship with Batman is amazing. They did a great job. Colin Farrell as the Penguin, fantastic, unrecognizable. He's got this like comic book Tony Soprano vibe to him, and I can't wait for his solo TV show that he's gonna get, because the way they end the story for Penguin is really great, and I can't wait to see what they do with him. He's fantastic. And there's a part where the Batmobile first shows up, and it's the car chase sequence you see in the trailer, and the tension in that scene brought forward by Matt Reeves as a director, mixed with Colin Farrell's fear trying to get away from the Batman, is second to none. And John Turturro as Carmine Falcone, he's great. He's a dirtbag. He's sleazy. He's everything he needs to be in the role, and he's great. Um, Before moving on to the pros, I guess we should really talk about Batman himself, played by Robert Pattinson. And this kind of goes between like the really great part of the story to me to kind of the meh. It's the way they portray him and Bruce Wayne. Just to give you the down and dirty of it, there is no difference in this movie between Batman and Bruce Wayne. They both act the same. They both have the same aura to them. The Batman they're going for, like Robert Pattinson is Batman in this movie for like 90% of the movie. There's hardly any Bruce Wayne. And what I think is an interesting way to do it, because since he's such an early version of Batman, uh, he's obsessed. He's very obsessed with being. I mean, the movie starts out with a voiceover from Robert Pattinson, and he's great in the role, but he's so obsessed with being Batman that he's not the recognizable Bruce Wayne that you're used to. Much like a thing like Christian Bale in the beginning of his trilogy, where he was already very like. He flaunted the fact that he was rich. He was with beautiful women and Lamborghinis. This Bruce Wayne wants nothing to do with it. He's very sad looking. He's dreary. He's downtrodden. There's almost no life to the poor guy. He just wants to be Batman. He carries around a duffel bag that has the bat suit in it, and it's like you look at him in the couple of scenes that he's Bruce Wayne, and he's just chomping at the bit to be the Batman. Which sometimes works in the movie, and other times it doesn't sit that well, just because I'm so used to seeing, you know, Bruce Wayne puts on the front of Bruce Wayne, puts on the front of Bruce Wayne very purposefully so that he can turn around and be the Batman. So there is no question that, why would this really rich, happy guy be Batman, So that's kind of, I don't know how that sits with me. I still need to watch the movie a couple of times, but for now, it's more like a meh, but his Batman is fantastic. He really is. The detective side of it is amazing. There are some philosophies behind this Batman I don't really agree with, mainly the suit, which we'll get to here in a little bit. But the way he acts, he's very alienated from everybody else. He just kind of stands on the crime scene and observes. He's absorbing everything. He's walking around. There's a scene where he's like kind of like directing the cops, like very subtly, like, "Hey, there's a clue there. There's an idea there." And watching him interact with Gordon was fantastic. But he's one of the most accurate versions of Batman, whereas the way he acts and the way that he is a detective that we've ever seen put to screen. So now moving out of the positives and going kind of like the meh, just things weren't that great. Like I said, Bruce Wayne, the take on Bruce Wayne was not that great in my opinion, just because I'm so used to that dichotomy. But I see why they did it. The Riddler. Riddler really didn't do too much for me. He's a ripoff of the Zodiac Killer mixed with the Killer from Seven by David Fincher. I don't really have too much to say about the Riddler without getting into spoilers. He's just not that great. Didn't really do anything for me. Didn't really scare me like everyone said he was going to. Um, I just wasn't really a huge fan of Paul Dano as the Riddler. He has one good scene with Batman towards the end of the movie, but other than that, didn't really do it for me. Didn't really like the whole live stream killer thing. Doesn't really do it for me. Now into the negatives. The way that Batman and Riddler look. I'll get Riddler out of the way. He looks like a gimp in his whole get up. Don't like it. I'm not saying he had to look like Jim Carrey, but he didn't have to look like a gimp either, like wearing a green trash bag. Not a huge fan of the way they did the Riddler. Not really much to say about that. Just didn't like the suit very much. Now the bat suit. The bat suit's very armored up, and this is something that's been a lot more prevalent over the last 10 years or so. And I'm just not a huge fan of Batman being armored up. And the long story short of that is just that he is supposed to, like, especially in this movie, right? They portray him as a man. He's only a man. But then there's scenes where he's walking down hallways. He's eating machine gun fire, and it's just bouncing off of his suit. And that looks cool, sure, but I mean, if we're going for hyper realism, not only would he have just shattered bones and punctured organs or whatever, but just like, if you're going through a really real take on Batman, an accurate take on Batman, Batman does not just walk down hallways like he's the Terminator and eat bullets. He attacks from the shadows. He moves in silence. He's a ninja, right? He's a ninja dressed like a bat. So to see Batman super armored up and just eat bullets, not really use stealth to his advantage is super disappointing. Especially in the beginning, of a really good voiceover from Pattinson when he says, it's just this scene where like they're being criminals, like different sequences of them, and there's these like dark shadows next to them, and they look in the shadows and they get scared. And Pattinson says, I can't be everywhere at once. They think I'm in the shadows, but I am the shadows. Like, that's so awesome. But then, halfway through the movie, for him to be walking down hallways, just eating bullets. Towards the end of the movie, there's a fight sequence where he takes a shotgun blast to the chest. I mean, like, it's not it's just not the way Batman operates. And I understand that he's in year 2, but I mean, you would think by 6 months in, he learns that he needs to use the shadows and not get shot. Um, and I understand that, a younger Batman would want to be armored up because he is this experience so he doesn't die. So hopefully in the next sequel, in the next movie, they give him a more traditional bat suit where it's not as armored up. I'm fine with like the symbol being armored and flame proof along with the cowl and the cape and the gauntlets and the boots. That's fine, but to have the whole thing armored up, I just never been a huge fan of it personally. And then yeah, I just don't want to get into spoilers. There's a thing that they tease at the end that is just super unnecessary. Super unnecessary. But overall, I enjoyed Batman. I did. I really did enjoy this version of the Batman. I'm glad that Warner Brothers let Matt Reeves do 3 hours and let him really flesh out the movie he wanted to make. Oh, that's one more negative I have is the studio. This is a personal things. I love Snyder stuff so much. I really hate that the studio gave Matt Reeves all this time and then kicked Snyder to the curb. That just does bug me. But for Matt Reeves, I'm glad that he got the 3 hours. I'm glad that he got to tell the story that he wanted to tell. Lord only knows how Warner Brothers would have butchered this if this came out 5 to 6 years ago. Um, but yeah, I love that Matt Reeves got to do what he got to do. I think Pattinson is a very formidable Batman, a Batman with a ton of potential. I want to see his Batman grow. I want him to grow out of just being the Dark Knight, being vengeance, and turning into the Batman, turning into the world's greatest detective, and being that part where he's able to compartmentalize his demons, be a happy-go-lucky Bruce Wayne, but then turn around at night and become the Batman and hopefully, open up his heart enough to a point where he can get a Robin, he can join a Justice League at one point. But for now, Matt Reeves has expressed interest in only doing a Batman universe. I'm really excited about that. I hope they really dive into it because there's a lot to do here and there's a lot of potential. Overall, I mean, I don't like really giving numbers, but I just say go watch it. Go watch it in IMAX. Go watch it on the biggest screen you can. It really is worth your time. I know this went a little longer than I planned, but thank you for listening and thank you for watching. I can't wait to discuss this movie further, so I'm sure we'll do in a few episodes to come. And yeah, well, I'll see you guys next time on the podcast. Have a great night. This episode of the Only Kings podcast is brought to you by OrganicPricedBooks.com. Guys, there's not been a better time to get into collecting comics, and OrganicPricedBooks.com has multiple formats such as the Omnibus, Deluxe Hardcover, and trade paperbacks at huge discounts, such as The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, originally at $125, marked down to $80. Use my discount code NOAH, NOAH, at checkout for an additional discount on top of what you're already getting, which can range from anywhere between 25 to 42% off. Again, organicpricebooks.com, discount code NOAH, NOAH, for an additional discount.